this guy's determined to be a giver. And I just thought to myself, I want to be that way.
Yeah.
I need to be that way. I kind of feel that, and maybe this isn't true, or maybe it's a little bit true, but like being generous, like a lot of people don't like handouts. They don't like getting things from others. They don't like asking for help. That's hard. That can be hard for a lot of people. As somebody who's like a giver, especially with like profound amounts at time, and like with, more than just like $10 or $5 for a coffee type thing. Do you find that being generous, you have to actually, like, to be a good giver, you have to actually be like determined to do it rather than just wanting to be a good person? Like, with these shoes, you were like, pick out some shoes. And I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to do this. He doesn't really mean this. And you sent me the link. I was so surprised, and I thought, oh my goodness. Like, when you did that, you sent me the link for the shoes. I thought, and it was like an hour later, I thought, this guy's determined to be a giver. And I just thought to myself, I want to be that way.
Yeah.
I need to be that way. Like that's what struck me right away when that happened. I was like, that's really good. That's a really good quality of.
I used to run into that. I know exactly what you're talking about, because I would run into that sometimes, where people would be resistive to generosity or suspicious of it. Right?
Okay.
And you, if you're not really serious about it, you're probably not going to do much, because most people, if you say like, hey, I'll buy you a nice pair of shoes, or hey, I want to buy you a new car, or, I've done all those things, people are like, huh? Like, people don't do that. So why are you doing that? So you have to be like really intentional. You have to say, first of all, I understand you feeling a little weird about this. I think in the beginning, I used to take that kind of an offense. Like,
right.
I'm trying to be generous to you, and
right.
You're like being suspicious of me. But no, like, be fair with them. This is weird. Like, normally people don't walk up and offer to buy you a car or take care of your hospital bill or things like that. Like, that's just not how people normally are. So you're a little weird about it. But secondly, I think, are you really serious about being generous? I think sometimes people also think that people are just saying it, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I have this house down here. If you ever want to use it, go for it. And it's like kind of like when you meet people for a while, and then you're like, we should get together sometime. And everyone goes, yeah, but no one means it. And so I often will say, if I'm trying to be generous for someone, I'll say, hey, I heard about this need that you have for a car. Like, I'll buy you a car. And they'll say, oh, okay. And then I'll look at them and I'll say, I want you to know something. If you don't want to take me up on this, I won't be offended. But it doesn't strain me financially to do so. And I really feel compelled that God wants me to do it for you. And they'll be like, oh. And then you can see all of a sudden, like, the wheels are turning, like, you're really serious about what you're saying.
Really serious. Wow.
Like, do you really want to do this? And then also, like, just that tactic of, like, sending them something. I've done that a lot. Like, where people will be like, nah, sure. And I remember one time someone had a big hospital bill that they were really struggling with. And they're like, I said, I'll take care of that for you. And they're like, oh, okay. I said, no, I'm very serious. I will do it. Like, if you tell me what the amount is, I will do it. And so then they never responded to me. And so I actually had somebody who worked at the hospital at that point. And I said, can you look up their bill for me? And they said, yeah. I said, I'm going to pay it for them. I want you to look it up for me. And so she looked it up and she sent me the information. I said, listen, a friend down there works at Lehigh Valley Hospital. She looked up her bill for you. I see how much it is. I said, who do I make the check out to? I have it right here, right now. What do you want? Where do you want me to send it? You want me to send it to you or the hospital? And they were like, you were serious about that? I said, yeah, I was very, very serious about it. I think sometimes people just don't believe that you're trying to do that. And so
it's crazy how it's something not a lot of people want to do, be a giver, especially with bigger amounts or like giving of what they work so hard for. But you would think, okay, finally I'm going to open the door to being a nice person or giving to others. And
it's so appreciative.
They're going to be so appreciative, and it's going to be so easy.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to say, oh, thank you for your money. Yeah. And they're going to, oh, so thank you for that. And it's not. You have to actually be like determined.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you know what? Take care of the issue. You don't know. I mean, so more than times than not, they don't even know I did it. Just take care of the issue for them and don't even tell them it was you.
Wow.
Just handle the issue for them.
That's
I mean, what do you
awesome.
really care about? You care about them, and you care about them having that resolved, and God laid it on your heart. Then it's not really necessary for them to even know you did it. So just if you can take care of the problem, like many times if it's something like that, like a bill that's behind or something like that, I just call the person and tell them, like, who are you with? This landlord or this medical thing or whatever. So I'm smart. I can call them and to ask them what the bill is. I'm sure if you say, that client you have that's behind on their thing, I'm going to take care of it. Nobody says, no, we only want them to pay it. They're like, sure, to give us the money, and we're happy to take it. So like, just take care of the issue. And then if they say like, well, do you want us to tell who it was? I say, no, just tell them that it's taken care of. Someone took care of it for them. So like,
That's
if you're really
awesome.
serious about it,
That's like a superpower.
is it?
Yeah, you're like a superhero
No.
when you get to that stage. You're like you're
I would
you're
be the lamest superhero on the face of the planet. Middle-aged.
like I think of like Batman and like I love the idea of somebody like just somehow finding out when crimes are taking place and showing up and fixing the problem.
Well, you know how I think of it? I think of it like this. I'm very clear on the fact that I'm going to die one day. I had a heart attack when I was 35 years old, and that really changed my
Oh, wow.
life. Made me really understand my mortality. So listen, there is coming a day, whenever that day is for me, it could have been when I was 35 years old, but maybe it's when I'm 85 years old. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there is no way, I have said this to myself a million times, you're going to think, I wish I held on to that extra $1,000, that extra $10,000. I'm so grieved that I gave it to that person. Here on my deathbed, that's the thing I care about. No, you'll be the reverse. That's what you would be. You would be the reverse. You would be like, I didn't do enough. I had all these resources and all these abilities and all these talents, and I had money and I had all this stuff, and I just selfishly absorbed it all for my entire life. Like, that's what your regret would be, right? That's your regret.
Definitely.
And I know that day's coming, and I'm not going to, I don't want to be in that position on that day. I don't want to be, and that's with a lot of things. I don't want to be in that position with how I treated my wife, how I handled my family, how I responded to God, all of that stuff. Like,
I always say this to people too, and that's what the Christian life is. One of the beautiful things about the Christian life is it's about living with no regrets.
yeah.
I want to be on the other side. I want to face judgment day. I want to see Jesus and not have regrets.
Me too.
I mean, and knowing how to do that intelligently and having a book that tells us, here's how you have no regrets at the end of your life. I mean, before I got saved, up until 22 years old, so much of my life was just filled with regret.
Yeah.
And I was just so young, and it's like, how can you be that young and have that much regret? And it's like, I definitely don't want to feel that way later on in life.
I mean, at 42, that's where I'm at, 42. I'll say it like this, and I think I shared this with you the other day. When I got saved, I certainly understood it's not about me. If anything good's going to happen here, it's because I'm in total dependence upon God. I'm in obedience to God, and He's going to do that work, and His way is the right way, and I agree. And that's where you're at when you get saved. But through my 20s and through all that building, there certainly became at times these feelings like, yeah, that's true. But I know some stuff now, right? I've got some talents. I've got some abilities. And I think in many circumstances through my 20s, even into my early 30s, there were times when I would be like, I wouldn't say this, but this was the attitude. Yeah, I know you're there, God, but I got this. Like,
Wow.
You don't have to be bothered by that.
Yeah, I feel like so many people feel that way.
I also know
All of us.
I also know what you think about this. I know what you think about this. I read the Bible every day. I've been in church my whole life. I don't really need you to come out of the box right now because I have all the information, right?
Uh-oh.
So just stay over there in the box, right?
Yeah.
I respect you, no disrespect. I'm going to probably do everything you would want me to do anyways. So I got this. Yeah, that's dangerous.
That's
so
the
dangerous.
point people get to when they actually start learning
Yeah.
the way the Christian life, the
You
Bible.
think you don't know anything because you don't, and then God saves you, and for some ridiculous reason, you start to tell yourself, I know stuff now. I don't need God as much. How dumb is that? That cycle is so stupid. And then you start to tell yourself even like about things in life, like, you repackage it so that you can swallow your own lies a little better. But it's like my way is a little better than what God's saying.
Ooh.
Right?
Yep.
And at 42, God has allowed so many things in my life, especially in the last 5 years, to just really solidify for me. And this is my statement at 42. Everything that God says is the truth.
Amen.
If you want to live your life the most optimal way he has designed for you, you will strive to adhere to what he says and how to do it in his way. And anytime you decide to kind of start creeping outside that boundary, that's when things start to go squirrely. It's like, come back in line with what God says, do it God's way. Everything he says is the truth. And the thing I've been telling you about how I've been saying this to kids, like, am I a Christian or am I not?
That's a good way to put it. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, like that's so applicable. I mean, if you are cruising around the internet, right? And something these days, my goodness, anything could come from anywhere that would be salacious, sexual, especially for men. And like, it's certainly a struggle every man has had about, immorality in their heart and lust and stuff like that. But a good question to ask yourself when that brain starts going, women are quite beautiful. I don't know. Wait a minute. Okay. Are you a Christian or are you not? Like, we're not denying the fact that women are beautiful and sometimes men have a hard time lusting after them. That happens. But what does God say about that topic? What are you supposed to do here? What does God want for you? So are you a Christian or not, man? If you're not, then go ahead. Go for it. But if you're a Christian, you belong to him, do what he says to do in this situation. And that's if you're going to lie, tempted to do whatever, tempted to be proud. Like, what does God want me to do in this situation? The more I do it, the more I want to do it that way, And the more I do it my way, the more I want to do it my way. And I've just building upon that the last 5 years, like just everything you do, ask God, what do you want me to do? I just did that the other day. I had a very complex issue that I was trying to work through. I was 2 hours into it before I asked myself that question, and I was ashamed. It's like, you have not even consulted God at all on this. And I had the problem 90% resolved in my head. Like, this is how it's going to get fixed. This is what I'm going to do. And then God was like, did you want to ask me anything? I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
You haven't said one word to me. You haven't prayed. You haven't asked God's wisdom on this. And I was like, so I scratched my whole plan, went back to the drawing board and talked to what God wanted me to do. And you know what's funny? What God wanted me to do was nothing like what I had planned. I had this Adam-centric way of fixing it, and he had a way more of saying, which is typically God's way, I'll let you do this little part, and that's only 10% of the solution. 90% is all going to be me, and you're going to hardly have any concept about what I'm doing, which is how God tends to work. It's like, he's like, you're going to play this very specific role in this, and the rest is you're going to trust me how I'm going to handle it.
And you might not even get to see the results and the glory of it.
But just trust that God's good, and whatever he does is going to be okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just trust that what God is going to do is going to be okay.
And that's interesting because in the beginning of the podcast, I was thinking you mentioned something about trusting God and kind of not being sure about what church and what to believe and stuff like that. But, ultimately, because a lot of people struggle with a lot of things that are maybe in the Bible or what people are supposed to do as a Christian. Yeah. But, we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything. God doesn't tell us everything. And we just ultimately have to trust his character. I know that he's a good God. And I know that not just by my own experience, but what I see in the Bible, story after story, it's God showing you his character. We have the story of Moses. We have the story of Noah. We have the story of David. We have the story of Daniel. We just over and over, it's God proving, this is my character. I never change. Yeah. This is who I am. You can trust me. And so even when there's things like, man, I just don't know what to think about that. It's like, I know God's a good God, though. I know he's fair.
How about when you're 21 years old and your daughter dies at birth? You certainly say that to yourself. But what in the world good could come out of this? How could a good God do this to me? This isn't right. This isn't fair. You could have those feelings, and no one would blame you for having those feelings in that moment. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do. But if you had that perspective, and you have to have that perspective, right? Because you don't know why that happened, and there's no way to fix it. Only thing you can do is say, you are good, and I'll trust that you allow this for a reason. But the cool part is I'm 20 years past that. And now I have seen what God was up to in my life. I actually get to see that a little bit. And he doesn't always show that all to you, but he has that specific thing showed me Like, I am the husband I am today because of that. I am the father that I am because of that. In many ways, my Christian life really jumped forward because of that. So many things changed in a positive way to this point, which I tell people often. If I could go back now in a time machine and I could not have that happen, not lose my daughter, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't undo it if I could.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Which, think about how you feel in the moment. That's all you feel is,
Oh, yeah.
I just want to undo this.
One thing I have
Just
to have.
if I could somehow not make this have happened, it would be the best answer right now. But when you get 20 more years of perspective, you change your mind about it. You say, no, I'm glad it happened. I want it to have happened. I needed that to have happened.
Ooh.
And just how many things in life are
In the
like
moment.
that.
And he was talking about that in Ecclesiastes last week. It's like in the moment, it's like, oh, I want this thing and this is what I want, but it's like, yeah, but it's not what you need though.
Yeah. So just trust God. Just trust him. And you're not going to understand it all. Just trust him. Just lean in on him and just say, hey, you don't want me to have a daughter right now. That's what you want.
Ooh. And that's the hard thing is when people, they don't like that answer, but they have to deal with it anyways, and they decide to do it without God. And
What's
it's like,
the reverse? This is not right. I'm angry this happened to me. And that, what does that facilitate? Bitterness, anger. It's like
More
God,
destruction.
God just knows. He just knows. He understands how frail we are, but he gives it to us and helps us to understand. Like, listen, buddy, I know you want to be all angry about this and bitter about it and mad at me about that, but I know that if you do that, it'll ruin your life.
ooh.
So here's the deal. Trust me, believe in me, have confidence in me and who I am, and I will give you peace and I will get you through the situation. Which way's better? Because you just said, you have to handle it some way. So why not handle it that way? The other way is self-destructive. You've seen people who get hurt bad from a breakup or a loss and whatever, don't take it the right way. You meet them 5-6 years later, they're just a crumpled ball of anger and bitterness.
Bad decision after bad decision.
And it facilitates more bad decisions. Yeah, exactly. So it's all for our good. Whatever he's doing, it's for our good.
But then we were also talking about the Bible and how this is what God says. We have a book that says this is what God says. Obviously, a lot of people would say, well, no, it was written by man. And how do we even know if that's from God? And to even say these things, we have to have it come from a position of having faith that it is from God. And that's true. But the faith isn't based off of me just wanting to have faith or not. That is what it will come down to after I see the facts. And the facts are, if you look at the Bible, the men who wrote this, they weren't benefiting it in their own life. And Joseph would be a great example of that, of somebody who literally gave up all of his young years to sit in prison thousands of years ago, where, I mean, people are afraid to go to prison nowadays. Think about back then and not being in, I've watched videos of prison systems in like third world countries and stuff. Oh, that's the last place you want to go. And that's probably exactly what it was like. Yeah. I mean, you imagine... and then him coming to the result, the end of that story, and being like, this was God's plan. It's all for him and it's all about him. The guy didn't get any benefit from making that story up, and there's every other story you see. Daniel in captivity, risking his life, being thrown in the lion's den. You don't benefit from these things happening to you just so that you could tell a story.
Suffering is good. Suffering is good. When you suffer, it makes you think. It makes you consider. It makes you evaluate. When everything's great, you don't really do that. A lot of that, it's just, well, it's great, so I'm happy, and things are, So it comes to a lot of things we talked about, but even like the church, like, okay, this is hard, and I don't like this, and this feels difficult, and whatever, so I'm going to leave. Really, like. You're about to get the benefit, like the best benefit you can get, which is stay, work through it, let God work in your life, like change as a person. The biggest sufferings, losing your daughter, losing a long-term relationship that you thought was something significant. I'm sure now, 5 years later, you look back on that and you can start to see, like, I do see why some of that was really good for me and
definitely.
why it helped me.
I mean, I traveled the world and started my own business and have my I've learned cameras and everything. That was all directly right after that. And I was so motivated.
Our biggest times of growth usually come after our biggest times of suffering.